Hello students, today we are discussing contingency theories of leadership. You all know leadership is one of the important factors for the effectiveness of the organization. What is leadership? It refers to the ability to influence the group towards the accomplishment of the goals. There are different theories which speak about how a leader is essential, how a leader has been developed, what are the characteristics of the leader. The evidence indicates that there are classical studies which spoke a lot about the theories of leadership. For example, the Iowa leadership studies, the Ohio state leadership studies, the early Michigan leadership studies are to name a few. These studies had set the stage for the traditional and modern theories of leadership. But today we are confined to the contingency theories of leadership. According to this model, the leadership depends upon the contingent on the event or the situation in which the leader is in. In one way, we can say the leader's effectiveness is contingent upon how his leadership style matches to the situation. According to this model, there is no one fixed model of leadership, or there is no one fixed style of leadership. A leader is effective only when his style matches the situation. Fiedler is one of the pioneers in enhancing the leadership trait theory, how the leader has been effective in contributing to the effectiveness of the organization. The Fiedler's contingency model proposes that effective group performance depends on a proper match between the leader's style and the degree to which the situation gives the leader the control. This model explains the relationship between leadership style and the favorableness of the situation. If you look at this diagram, it indicates that the leadership effectiveness depends on two factors. One is leadership style, that is the personality of the leader, and the other is task motivation, that is the characteristics of the situation. How to apply Fiedler's contingency model? There are three steps. The first step indicates first you need to identify your leadership style. The second step indicates identify your situation. The third step is determine the most effective leadership style. Now, let us see how we can identify the leadership style. Fiedler believes the key factor in leadership success is the individual's basic leadership style. He created least preferred co-worker scale or a questionnaire to identify the scale by measuring whether a person is task oriented or a relationship oriented. For example, you can look at this slide where the least preferred co-worker scale is rated. Towards the left you will have the unpleasant constructs, and towards the right you will have the pleasant constructs related to a person. The person is asked as to rate the person with whom you have the least enjoyment to work on this point on this scale. So, by rating the person on a scale of 1 to 8, which indicates like either towards the friendliness or the unfriendliness, whether you are liking the person, whether you are unliking the person, the score depicts whether you are towards the high score or towards the low score. If the questionnaire is indicating a high score, that means you are more of the relationship oriented. If the score is indicating that you are on the lower side, that is the lower score, that indicates that you are the task oriented. For example, the type of leader who gets a low score on this LPC is task oriented leader. Fiedler called them as low LPC leaders. He said LPC leaders are very effective at completing the tasks, but they do not give much importance to the relationship building. On the other hand, if a person gets a higher score, they are more towards the personal connections, developing the bonding with the individual, and also good at managing the conflict. They are more towards relationship oriented leaders. Situational favorableness is the concept given by Fiedler in terms of three dimensions. These three dimensions are leader-member relations, which is the first input into the situational favorableness. The second factor that is most important for the situational favorableness is task structure, and the third one is leader's position power. Once we have identified the leadership style, and the next step will be to evaluate the situation in terms of these three variables, that is about the relation, about the degree of task structure, and about the leader's position power. Fiedler states that if a person has a better member relations and if the task is highly structured, and even like when the control over the situation is more, obviously the leader will be having better control over the situation and he is able to make the task done by the employees. But suppose if it is an unfavorable situation, naturally where the leader member relations are low, the task structure is not effective, and even the power that the leader has over the situation is low, we can say that the leader has very low control over the situations. So, once we identified what the leadership style, once we have understood the components of the situation, that is whether the favorableness or it is unfavorable, we need to match the leaders and the situations. Situations are favorable to the leaders if all the three dimensions are high. For example, if we can say that the leader is accepted by the employees or by his subordinates, and similarly if the work is very clear cut in its rules and regulations, if the leader also has control over the reinforcement part, that is when to give the rewards, when to give the punishments to the employees, obviously we can say that the leader is able to adapt to the situation and he has control over the situation. But if the opposite turn exists, that is if all the dimensions are low, then we can say the situation is very unfavorable. Fiedler concluded that through his research, the favorableness of the situation depends upon the leadership style of the individual, and together these two leads to the effectiveness of the organization. If you look at this graph, we can say when the situation is very unfavorable or very favorable, naturally the leaders will be more of task oriented, that is task directed. They try to get the things done. But if the situation is moderately favorable or moderately unfavorable, mostly they will be human oriented or democratic oriented. So, the task structure, the favorableness of the situation, all these things determine the effectiveness of the leader. Fiedler also postulated that depending upon these three dimensions, that is leader member relations, task structure and the leader's power, we can have 8 possible situations in which the leaders can find themselves. For example, if you look at this slide, we have 8 categories, that is like 8 different situations where those can be classified as favorable or unfavorable or moderate. For example, if you look at leader member relations is good, task structure is also high, position power is also strong, the situation can be classified as very favorable situation. But on the other hand, if you look at the 8th category where all these 3 dimensions are not strong, one is poor, the other is weak, the other is low, naturally that is an unfavorable situation. So, the situation also determines which type of the leadership style will be acted upon by the leader, whether he will be task oriented or whether he would be relationship oriented. This is like we can find out the determining effective leadership styles. For example, leader member relations is good, task structure is structured, leader's position power is strong, then we can say the most effective leader may have low LPC. Similarly, if you go to the last dimension where all the 3 are poor, unstructured and weak, that can also be having the low LPC. In case if you take the moderate in between where the leader member relations are good, task structure is unstructured, leader's position power is weak, there we can have high LPC. So, all the 3 dimensions and the 8 different types of situations will help us to determine which would be an effective leadership style. So, according to this theory, there are only 2 ways to improve the leader effectiveness. One is change the leader to fit the situation. The other alternative is change the situation to fit the leader. So, when you have to change the situation, that means restructure the tasks or increase or decrease the leader's power to control the factors like giving more salaries or reduce the salaries, give promotions or stop the promotions and other disciplinary actions. So, when the leader is given the control over the situation, probably there might be a change in the situations. What is the research support that we have for this contingency model? It has become very popular, though there is criticism against it, but maximum of the evidence indicates whatever Fiedler predicted that has been proved in most of the studies. For example, Fiedler cited 30 studies in a wide variety of teams and organizations. For example, research teams, shop departments, supermarkets, engineering departments, where he tried to apply this contingency model of leadership, and he found that this theory is highly predictive and the relations obtained in the validation studies are almost identical to those obtained in the original studies. Now, the second theory is path goal leadership theory. This is developed by Robert House. The path goal theory tries to explain the impact that leader behavior has on associate motivation, satisfaction and performance. According to Robert House, there are 4 different styles of leadership. One is directive leadership. In this type of the leadership, associates are clear about the task that they have to do, what is expected of them. However, the leader also gives the directions very clearly in this. So, there is no direct participation by subordinates. Whatever is directed to them, they will be doing it. The second style of leadership is supportive leadership. The leader is very friendly, unsupportive, and they show a genuine concern for the subordinates. The third type of leadership is participative leadership. Here, the leader asks the suggestions from the associates, makes them participate in various tasks, but however, he himself will be taking most of the decisions. The last type of leadership is achievement oriented leadership. In this kind of the leadership style, the leader sets the challenging tasks for the subordinates. He motivates them to accomplish those tasks. So, here the leader makes the employees or the subordinates more of achievement oriented type by giving them the challenging tasks. This path goal theory is different from Fiedler's theory in one aspect, that is, these various leadership styles can be used in different places or in different situations by the same individual. 2 of the situational factors that have been identified are personal characteristics of the associates and the environmental pressures and demands faced by the associates. If you look at this path goal relationships, on one hand you have leader behaviors or styles, just now whatever we discussed, directive, supportive, participative, achievement oriented, and how the associates are perceiving, what is their motivation level. These 2 together lead to the outcomes. Outcomes include satisfaction of the associates, role clarity, goal clarification and performance. All these 3 will also be influenced by the associate characteristics like locus of control and the ability of the associate. The individual alone cannot make the situation very effective. The environment also plays an important role. So, under the environment in which the associates are, that is, whether the task characteristics are clear, whether there is a formal authority system from whom they are able to get the instructions, and the primary work group together influence the outcomes of a particular situation. Using one of these 4 styles contingent on the situational factors, the leader attempts to influence associates' perceptions and motivate them to get the role clarity, goal expectancies and the satisfaction and performance. There is empirical support even for the path goal leadership. At least like studies on 7 organizations found that leader directiveness was positively related to the satisfaction and expectancies of associates who are engaged in the ambiguous tasks. The same study also focused on how the leader directiveness is negatively related to the satisfaction and expectancies of the associates engaged in the clear tasks. Another studies, an array of studies showed 10 different samples of employees found that supportive leadership had its most positive effect on satisfaction of associates when they are working under stressful, frustrated situations or when they have dissatisfying tasks. In another study, like in a manufacturing organization, it was found that in non-repetitive, ego-involving tasks, employees were more satisfied under participative leaders than under non-participative leaders. Another evidence in 3 separate organizations is they found that for employees performing ambiguous non-repetitive tasks, the higher the achievement orientation of the leader, the more associates were confident that their efforts would yield them the better results and the effective performance. In the path goal leadership, the leader accomplishes certain things. The first one is recognizing and encouraging or arousing the associates for the outcomes for which the leader has some control. The another aspect the path goal leadership theorist mentions is increasing personal payoffs to associate for work goal attainment. The third factor is making the path to those payoffs easier to travel by coaching and direction. The fourth one is helping associates clarify expectancies. The fifth factor is reducing frustrating barriers. Sixth one is increasing the opportunities for personal satisfaction contingent on effective performance. So, in order to set the goal for the followers, the leader has to focus on the followers' personal characteristics, recognizing where their barriers are, how they can be helped to overcome their barriers, and any additional benefits to be given to them, so that will motivate them to do or to take up a serious task. Then setting their expectancies not by the leader himself, but probably allowing them to the brainstorm and then set the goal or the goal expectancies by the followers, and trying to see like how the barriers can be overcome, asking the followers their obstacles, whether they are from the environmental side or whether they are from the personal factors or whether the barriers are from the task. If the brainstorming session can give from the followers where the problem is, naturally the clarity can be achieved. The last one is like exploring the opportunities. With the change of the technology, the associates can also be encouraged to use the technology for exploring the new opportunities and avenues as to how they can reach the direction, as to how they can reach the goal. The last theory is situational leadership theory. According to this theory, leadership depends on selecting the right leadership style contingent on the followers' readiness or the extent to which they are willing to accomplish a particular task. A leader should choose one of the behaviors depending on the followers' readiness. The first behavior is we have to check whether the followers are able and willing to do. Based upon their ability and willingness, the leader will decide. So, if followers are unable and willing to do a task, the leader needs to give clear and specific directions. The second situation is if they are unable and willing, the leader needs to display high task orientations to compensate for the followers' lack of ability, and high relationship orientation to get them influence to the leader's desires. If followers are able but unwilling, the leader should use a supportive and participative style. If the followers are both able and willing, the leader doesn't need to do much. So, this theory acknowledges the importance of followers and builds on the logic that leaders can compensate for their limited ability and motivation. So, to conclude, though there are number of theories of leadership, today in short we discussed about the contingency theories of leadership. This has been given by Fiedler, who said like the leadership style and the situation should match for the effectiveness of the organization, for the effectiveness of the group performance. When we administer a questionnaire, you will be knowing whether your score is on the lower score or on the higher side. If the person is getting the lower score on a particular questionnaire, that is LPC, naturally the person is more of the relationship oriented. If the score is high, we can say that the leadership style is relationship oriented. Similarly, the path goal leadership theory states that the followers will be given a goal and the leaders will be encouraging them to achieve that. In fact, it is the leader's responsibility to lead the followers to the goals. And the last one is the situational theory of leadership. So, these are the three things that we have covered in today's class.